Unmuted.
All right, I'd like to welcome you to the October 23rd meeting of the Regional Wastewater Reclamation Advisory Committee meeting, and we'll do a call to order, and that is a call to order and roll call. Roll call.
All right. Good morning. Alejandra Frejo Arque is not on just yet. Anne Marie Wolf. Here. Asia Philbin.
Here.
Claire Zucker.
Here.
Craig Canizaro.
Here.
Eric Sulwold.
Here.
Kirsten Wainsvik.
Here.
Matt Mathewson.
Here.
Rebecca's not here. Scott Oldendorf.
Here.
Steve Foley, not here. Okay, we have a quorum.
All right, excellent. I'd like to go ahead with the virtual meeting reminder. Please mute your microphones. It'll help ensure that there's no feedback or background noises that could interfere with the speakers. If a committee member would like to speak or ask a question, please use your raise your hand feature and remember to lower that when you're done. When you're ready to speak, please unmute your microphone. This is especially important during votes. And don't forget to mute your microphone afterwards. As a reminder, audience members are only permitted to speak during the call to the audience unless called upon by the committee. And this meeting is being recorded to satisfy the open meeting law requirement. We'll move on with the Pledge of Allegiance. 2 seconds. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, we'll move on with item E, call to the audience. Do we have any audience members that would like to speak today? Anybody out there? All right, hearing none, we'll move on to the safety share. Jackson's not here today, as you can probably see, and so we don't have his safety share. Does anybody else have one that they would like to share with the group? Yeah.
Halloween, it's out. Gotta watch out for the little goblins and ghosts.
Nice. Anything else that people want to share? I don't have one today. Okay, all right, we'll just move on. Approval of the minutes, the meeting minutes for September 25th, 2025. Did everybody get a chance to review the minutes? Any changes recommended by anybody? All right, all those in favor of, oh, actually, I need a motion. Need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Okay, and I need a second.
Second.
All right, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, they're approved.
All righty.
Excellent. We're going to move on to, there's no report from the director.
Mhm.
This is going to be a short meeting, huh?
Don't set up the reputation.
I had to, I just think. it's a joke. Okay, we have the annual report to the Board of Supervisors. We have the final review. Has everybody had a chance to look at that? And we're going to go ahead and approve this if we like it. Are there any other comments? It looks beautiful.
This is the final draft received from comms with the photos in the layout, so you can see how it's set to go. Does anybody have any comments or?
I just gonna say, I don't know if it matters, but Alan had said it's not gonna be the committee.
Yeah, but this is for last year. This report is for last year, so Rob's name is still in there. So they were here all last year, so they're all included. Any other comments?
Yeah, similarly, I do have Conway operated by Jacobs under contract to us, and they just gave me their annual report, so I'll make that available for next.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. And I will make a note to get it from you.
Okay.
It's great. Great job on this. And I appreciate people's review before.
Very much. Your comments and your corrections, so greatly appreciated that perspective.
Any other comments or thoughts about the annual report? All right, do I hear a motion to approve?
I make a motion to approve.
Do we have a second?
Second.
We have 2 seconds.
Oh,
First, is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
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 And do we have any nays? Hearing none, the annual report is approved.
Fantastic. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
All right, one of my favorite moments in this meeting is the Living River Report. Very excited to see you, Claire. Welcome. And
Claire.
yes. Please go ahead. But maybe I'll just,
Come on over and, I will. Yes.
I suppose I should actually introduce you with your whole name. Claire Zuckmeyer is here to speak about the Living River Report, and she is from the Sonoran Institute.
See if you just press the forward button here. That should do you.
Thanks, everyone. Good to be here. This might be the first RAC committee meeting I've been to without Jackson. But he's doing all right.
Yeah.
I missed the Indian.
He was out last month
Oh.
too. He's out this, and he's going partying next month too.
Oh my gosh, we'll go Jackson.
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry. So, I'm here to give the update for anyone who's not familiar with Sonoran Institute. We are a conservation nonprofit, and we were founded here in Tucson in 1990. So we're celebrating 35 years this year. And we work throughout the Colorado River Basin, but here locally, we have our Santa Cruz River program, which is where I work. I'm an ecologist and lead program manager for our Santa Cruz River program. And so for the last, 20 years or so, our work has mainly been focused on the main stem of the river, and we're working to see that the river is a living, flowing river that is the foundation of our community's health and prosperity. Always want to acknowledge that the river flows through the land and territories of Indigenous peoples, and that includes in Santa Cruz watershed, we have the Tohono and the Yaqui, whose relationships with the land and the river continue today, to this day. And also like to just remind ourselves of the watershed and where we are. The river starts in the San Rafael Valley, flows south into Mexico, and then makes a U-turn and flows north through a bunch of different communities and on past Marana before it joins the Gila River. And then the Gila River goes into the Colorado River, so we're tributary of the Colorado River. The river didn't flow from start to finish as one continuous flow of water, but for a long time, there were places with year-round water that was available. And what we're showing here are the current stretches of river that flow year-round, with thanks to the release of treated wastewater from our urban areas. So we have the flow downstream of the Nogales International Treatment Plant, close to Nogales. I should look at the computer and the screen. And then we have the flows downstream of Agua Nueva and Tres Rios. And then we have the flow in the Heritage Reach, which also is, well, that's complicated, but it's has been water from the Agua Nueva facility. What's missing on here is water from the Tucson Airport remediation project. All right, so I get to do this annual update for you all, but really the Living River Project is a big team of people that are responsible for a lot of different work. So we have high quality water being produced that goes into the river. We have restoration, monitoring, and management that happens along the river. And then we have a lot of community engagement. And I've made some additions this year to this, but then realized, you know, there are people, partners outside of who's listed that are supporting our community engagement efforts and monitoring and such. So it's really a large team, but it's a partnership between Sonoran Institute, Pima County, and since 2019, Tucson Water. And I feel really fortunate to continue to work with everyone on this team. So since 2013, we have been one major activity, not the only activity, but a major activity has been reporting on river conditions and all the great things that are happening along the river. And so we've had 12 reports highlighting progress, with the latest report just released last month. This report, thanks to Tucson Water's translation, is available in English and in Spanish. And then we have so much that we want to share that doesn't fit in the print report, that we have an online only supplemental report. And this online resource, I'm hoping to turn into a more engaging, dynamic story map format in the next year. So hopefully next year I'll be saying, and now we have this really cool story map to share all this information that can't fit in a print document that's more engaging, not just in a, yeah. So we shall see what the next year entails. But this year we're celebrating building river community, and really the theme for this year's report came from the realization that the river is increasingly becoming an outdoor learning space. And some of the data that we're showing in the report is about the adults and students that have come to the river for educational events. In the Santa Cruz Heritage Project, we've had many different tours and educational programs. But in the Northwest Tucson to Marana Reach, where we've had a longer history of water and a longer stretch of river in general, we have a large number of people coming to the river. And this just reflects two main programs. This is not by any means trying to capture everything happening at the river. So these numbers, the roughly like, what is that? 602,000 is largely from the Living River of Words and diverse family-friendly programs that the Pima County, the whole logo is not showing up on this slide, but it's the Pima County Conservation Lands and Resources Department. Their environmental education team does a great job with their Living River of Words program. And then they have throughout the year a lot of other birding, journaling workshops, all sorts of activities at the river that are family friendly. And then University of Arizona for the last few years has had a program called RWRAC, which is a immersion research heavy experience for teachers over the summer that then translates to those teachers getting their students out to the river during the school year. And so those two programs are the numbers that you saw on the previous slide. But there's a lot more building community, river community happening. Pima County Wastewater, for example, has been leading a lot of community visioning around the Roger Road plant and what the redevelopment should be. And so I know a report was recently completed. I don't know if this committee has seen it, but it's not a decision that has been made, but there is a concept of what the community would like to see at this site, which includes open space, ecological restoration, historic preservation of this history of this important role the Roger River plant has had for our community, and then some economic development. So we've highlighted that in the report as well. And then an updated floodplain management management plan. It's saving us money, it's protecting function, but maybe the most exciting part is that we're implementing these really important multi-benefit projects, including one that's pictured here, the new bridge that was just completed this summer, that is another Building River community tool, or not tool, asset, where users of the loop now can cross over to the other side of the river in a stretch of the river that had no, once you were on the east or west bank, you couldn't transition. This is right around Prince Road, so just south of where we're at. All right, but how is the river itself doing? We like to give condition updates on the river itself. And groundwater in the Heritage Reach has risen to levels not seen since the 50s. It was really exciting to share this story this year in the report to help people understand just how successful that recharge effort has been. So what you're seeing here is a map of depths to groundwater since the 50s. And there's 4 different wells located in the area near the base of a mountain. And you can see their depths. And they decline, they kind of bottom out, I guess, and start increasing. But this increasing groundwater really
Figured what I'm.
really goes up once the Santa Cruz River Heritage Project starts in 2019. And this increasing groundwater has been supporting a lot of, well, and the flows in the river too, has been supporting vegetation. And most noticeably in the last year, young willow trees, Gooding's willow, coming up along the river. And I should have put in a photo of more recent, and the trees keep getting bigger. I've not been since the monsoon season, so I don't know if these young willows have made it through some of the floods that we ended up seeing recently. But it's exciting to see all the trees coming out. We are also seeing a really big, flood control is working on a big infrastructure project in the Twin Peaks area to install grade control structures to train the river as best we can to stay in the center of the river area and away from our bank protection. During this, or before the infrastructure project started, there was a big effort by Harris Environmental to relocate reptiles in the project area before construction started. And including these 632 reptiles, there were Sonora mud turtles that were translocated to the Heritage Reach and have been radio tagged, and they are loving their new home. We always have to talk about the high quality water that we keep putting into the river. The water quality is high and it's supporting diverse aquatic life. And this year we wanted to talk about how dissolved oxygen has been high and steady and constant, which is good for our fish and other aquatic organisms. And then ammonia has been low, and biological oxygen demand is a measure of the oxygen being used by organisms in the water, breaking down things like ammonia and other nutrients. So you'll see that biological oxygen demand follows follows the ammonia. And they both have been generally low, but when we have small upticks in ammonia, there's a little uptick in biological oxygen demand. But things are looking really good for our aquatic life. And dragonfly diversity, we have seen tremendous increase in the dragonfly diversity along the river. And what you're seeing here is only data since January of 2023, when University of Arizona started doing monthly dragonfly surveys in both the heritage reach on the left and the Northwest Tucson to Marana on the right. And dragonflies really like warm weather. So you'll see that there's some annual or seasonal fluctuation. So when it's cold, you won't find very many dragonflies, and that's normal. But then as soon as it starts warming up, you'll start seeing the dragonflies emerging from the water. And even so, Heritage Project is a newer site, but we've had really good diversity of species there. And that photo of the Comanche skimmer is actually a new species seen to the Santa Cruz River that was found in the Heritage Project reach. It had never been documented on the Santa Cruz River. I think the nearest populations were the Gila River. So that's really exciting. And then Marana, with our more robust vegetation and just more water in general, the Marana site overall has more diversity and more quickly, reaches it ramps up the diversity at a faster rate than in the heritage. But I think it's just because that's a more established habitat compared to heritage. But with just a little bit of water in heritage, we're able to support habitat for a lot of dragonflies, which is great. We also wanted to highlight the importance of the river for birds. Oh, you guys can't, I don't know, I guess the bottoms of my slides are not coming through, so you can't see the number of people that made all these observations. So eBird is a citizen science effort hosted by Cornell. And people, when they're out in the river, they document all the birds that they see, and all of their observations go into a database that's accessible for anyone who wants to use this data. So in the Heritage Project reach, we had 45 people document 96 bird species, and these are the top 5 species that were most commonly observed: the house finch, mourning dove, birding. And then I forget the exact number, it's close to 2,500 people, I think, that documented 234 bird species. And both of these, these are thousands of observations made, and the top species being found there. And what's interesting is that the verdin is in the top 5 for both of these stretches of the river. And apparently this eBird data has shown that in the Southwest in general, the verdin are on the decline in certain areas. In the Tucson area, they're not sure how they're doing, but it's good to see that they're showing up in the top 5 most common birds here. All right, so as I mentioned before, we are also doing lots of different community engagement efforts, trying to get people to the river and knowing about all the great work that's happening by so many people in this region. And one of these ways is trash cleanups. Sonoran Institute and partners host a few trash cleanups a year, but there are many organizations hosting trash cleanups. So the total for last year was almost 800 people and 10 tons of trash. And I think that, I'm forgetting the exact statistic right now, but I think that this was a big increase in the number of people. We had 300 people come out to a single event, which was really amazing. And our next trash cleanup is actually on Saturday. So Saturday from 9 to noon, we'll be at Juhan Park, which is just north of Grant on the west bank of the river. We'll be doing a cleanup there, and you can find information on our website about that if you would like to join. And I can't remember right now if Wastewater's annual river cleanup is included. I think it is included in this 2024 cleanup tally. And this year, we also had a Connecting Waters art making workshop and a gallery reveal. We got to work with a local artist, Maria, whose last name just jumped out of my mind. And she had won a grant from local entity and was able to develop some unique art pieces. There's a little teaser here on the right or on the left of her artwork. She made 4 pieces focused on the Santa Cruz River. And then the final element was hosting this workshop at the river where she gave everyone some tips on how to sketch when you're at the river. And it was really fun, a really great new way to experience the river. We also gave a little tour and talked about the river at that location. We also had our annual Santa Cruz River Research Days, which was very successful, like our 4th highest attendance with, I think we had 124 people attending. We've been doing a hybrid bilingual virtual and in-person event for the last few years. And this year we had the representation from both the US and Mexico for the IWC and their counterpart, SELA, discussing, binational management of the river. And we had a tour down in Tubac area. Most exciting, which is very appropriate to come right now to give this update, is following the Santa Cruz River Dragonfly Festival. We just finished that up last month, and this was our biggest festival yet. We had 11 events and activities, and 5 of them were bilingual. And we're still working on the final number, but around a conservative estimate of about 2,000 people engaged in these activities and events. It was really fun. This is one of the areas where I was saying there's a lot of people that aren't on that flower chart. We have Town Marana, Parks and Recreation, Mission Garden, University of Arizona, and other folks that make this festival possible. And it's just so much fun. The pictures you're seeing here are from 2 of our events. We have this annual Bugs and Bites event, which is just a fun way to get together and listen to some presentations about the river and dragonflies and some other bug. And this year we had leaf hoppers, and that's been held at the playground. And then on the right side of the screen, you see a bunch of photos from our dragonfly tours, which is how we end the festival. We have these guided dragonfly tours. Actually, you can see another one of our activities, the landing place art installation that hopefully some of you guys have heard about, the wind socks that Kimmy Isel and Maxie Adler had placed along the river in the Heritage Reach earlier this year in April. They were celebrating the life that was returning to the river, and each windsock has a unique design on it representing some of the life on the river. Really beautiful. And we had them come back and install their 16 windsocks scattered at 4 different places. So at all the places where we had our dragonfly tours, they were up all month long. So that was really fun. And encourage anyone to join any of these events. We try to make it accessible to all ages and all abilities. We have tours in Mission Garden, which is all accessible location. And then there's clearly, we're walking in the river and even wading in the river in the Marina site. And since I'm here, I just thought I would mention a few other little river-related work items. In the Nogales area in 2024, we installed our very first litter trap to capture floatable trash. So this is a small pilot effort that we wanted to see how it would do in this area. And it's been very successful, and we're looking to install bigger systems down in the Nogales area. But we are really excited I think we're almost ready to install some pilot traps in the Tucson area, one in the downtown area and one in Arroyo Chico. So I don't know if they'll be this size. Luke Cole has been leading this effort and working with the county and the city to install these. It'll be really exciting. It builds on our efforts to study the trash and remove trash and just find as many tools as we can to try to keep the trash out of the river. And this is an easy way to collect it and have one place to remove trash instead of having it scattered all over the system. And the comment here that it's high visibility and a social media favorite. One of our most popular social media videos was a video of our trash trap collecting trash. So people really like.
How do you empty it?
I think in the Nogales area, the city of Nogales has gone regularly to remove things. Luke tries to get down to document what's in there before that's happened. But yeah, someone has to go and remove the trash once it's collected. Another big thing that we're working on is the Santa Cruz River National Wildlife Refuge. There has been a lot of action and success around this, where we have a very large coalition, regional coalition with support for creating this wildlife refuge along the Santa Cruz River. And there's been support from both counties, the San Javier District, the Tonawata Nation, City of Tucson, and even the governor. And this year, in January, Fish and Wildlife Service has allocated staff and resources towards establishing the refuge. We're at the point, as I understand it, again, this is Luke's area, but as I understand it, we're at the final step now where we'll be looking to see, okay, which property makes sense. And once we have a property, then it's we officially have a refuge, and then we can add on to it over time. But right now, there's a lot of support for establishing refuge. And it would recognize the river, in both counties and all along the corridor, even if we have just a series of stepping stones that are protected and a land base for the refuge. So that's really exciting too. You can learn more about Sonoran Institute's Santa Cruz work and all of our work on our website or on our social media. And of course, we always love everybody's support as a nonprofit. And I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone might have. And I also, for those of you in the room, I have hard copies of the report if you would like to have a hard copy.
When's the next dragonfly? Is it gonna be September next year?
Yeah, we're entering the cooler season, so dragonfly activity is gonna decrease. But yeah, we focus on September, with the release of the report is when we host the Dragonfly Festival. So, but there might be other dragonfly tours that you can catch for then. Our partners at the Pima County, the environmental education team within Conservation Lands and Resources has all sorts of monthly walks and, activities along the river. And I feel like there might be some dragonfly focused.
I think Mission Gardens also does those.
Yeah, maybe we should garden too. So,
Yeah.
September is the one time of year where we're really celebrating and pushing it out to making sure everybody knows about dragonflies.
Well, that is so great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Sorry. Have you guys been working with, they have a project that they're gonna be doing advanced water purification? Which I imagine would take water, was gonna go in the river, it may not go in the river.
Like the one at Ina or at Trace Rio.
Yeah.
I'm aware of it. We haven't been, well, Kimberly's here. Maybe Kimberly's been tracking it more. Kimberly is part of the Living River Project team. I know I did some quick numbers analysis when I first saw it, news about it. And I think it would definitely take some water from the river, but there would still be plenty, at least in its initial phase, that would still be going into the river. But yeah, with the, with the water demands and increasing needs for water, we might come to a point where the community has to decide, okay, how much water do we want to put in the river? This really came forth with the Project Blue earlier this year too, where the community was really upset about that. So I think, yeah, we, Sonoran Institute really would like to see just community decisions around how much water we want to see being dedicated to the river, being used for the important role of supplying everyone with water. So lots of decisions to be made, but lots to celebrate too.
Just a little follow-on question. So I've become more recently aware of the issues at the border in Rickwood Canyon. I know, so
Yes.
I think Sonoran Institute is involved with SELA.
Yes,
Maybe
we are.
IWC, and trying to figure out what to do about those little two overcapacity treatment plants. I'm just curious if you have any info, because to me, that seems like probably the most impaired reach that I'm aware of is the headwaters going into.
Yeah, great question. So, right along the border, you guys want a visual of where we're talking about with Brickwood and Oso Wash. So, the main thing that most people hear about, Nogales Wash, is coming from Nogales and kind of snakes from the urban areas north towards the treatment plant and joins the river right behind the treatment plant. But there's another tributary that starts in Mexico and crosses the border just west of the Santa Cruz and then joins the river. And there are two facilities that were built for some new urban development in the Nogales Sonora side. I finally just learned those years recently. I think it was 2012 and 2018 or something like that. Yeah. And there have been flows of water crossing the border that are not always of the clean standard that we aspire to. Yeah. So we are definitely studying, we are working with IBWC and SELA and ADQ. We're working in that area, trying to understand conditions and what some options are for addressing that. Interestingly, just near there, just north of where Oso Wash, which is the name in Mexico, and Brickwood Canyon, in the US, where it joins with the Santa Cruz, there is, I think, practically year-round water, and there are fish. And so that to me is a really good sign that even though there's these problematic water quality issues just upstream, it's cleaning its way. And once it gets to the river, it's maybe not as bad because there are fish. We have Gila top minnow and longfin dace that are surviving there. I recently just added that location into our annual fish survey so we could keep tabs on it.
I think I saw some pictures of like algae, like on both sides of the river and some of the beach.
Yeah.
Things.
Yeah.
Those treatment plants and funding. Get graded to fix the problem.
Yes, so we're working on it, with both sides of the border, looking for, binational solutions. And probably be touching on that a little bit in the Nogales report that I'm working on to hopefully get it out in December. And, yeah, one thing that's been really interesting that I had noticed even before knowing about these treatment plants, and they're planning to expand in that area too. So there's potential for even more flows coming there. That the number of days with flows, if there's a stream gauge, a USGS stream gauge in that area too. And I've seen this increase in the number of days with flow in that area. And I suspect it's in part influenced from Oso Wash.
Right. Do we have any more other questions or comments?
I just have one question. You were talking about the young willows. There was a little bit of water going through that area, and then the willows and that are all populating in that area. So that sucked up all the water that is flowing through the area and now just saturates the soil.
That's a good question, but it's not, the conditions in the heritage reach are so variable that it's hard to have an exact answer to that question. But there are willows in other places, not just there. And I would say they're definitely using water, but there's still, that's kind of at the northern end of the flowing stretch. So it could look, there's definitely still, they're not using all the water. That's the short answer. There's still water, and that's far, actually that photo is far from where they're putting water into the reach. So it's a good ways downstream.
We need to go to our next thing. Oh, we have one.
Will you stay around till after the
Yes.
meeting? Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, Claire. It was really delightful to hear about that project. Right. Now we're going to move on to the Pima County Sustainable Action Plan for County Operations. We have Sarah Davis, Senior Advisor to the County Administrator. Oh, there you are. Would you like to come up here to speak or?
Center.
It's kind of where, and
Wherever you prefer.
Come on up here.
It's great to see you again. While we're getting the slide deck, I want to underscore a huge shout out on the Dragonfly events as a family with small humans who are obsessed with Dragonfly. We really celebrate September as apple season and Dragonfly season. So great work every year. And thankfully this year it wasn't still 110 degrees like last year was. So thank you for providing the amazing Dragonfly content.
So you can just come here to advance.
Oh, perfect. Thanks, everybody.
Hello, Art.
Sarah Davis.
Director Flanagan. Great to see you all. I think I was here maybe last year to talk about the development of what we are now building into the county operation. What you know it as is a sustainable action plan for county operations, which it's been since 2007 through 2024 and through a board resolution that was completed last year to grow our sustainable action plan for county operations into a real climate action plan. And so when I was here last, I think I started to debrief how we were kind of modeling this, all the feedback gathering we were doing, some of the regional work that we're doing and how that folds into the county operations components. So this is a culmination of all of that work to date and kind of how we're doing this modeling and what we are preparing for our Pima County Board of Supervisors to consider for adoption for our 2025 to 2030 goals. So in addition to it now being morphed into our climate action plan for county operations, what we realized in all of these priority areas, and I'll dig into kind of how this model works, what you'll start to see is a new brand, an umbrella by which we are calling it Pima Climate Action Now. A lot of the work that we've been doing over the past, since 2007, but especially over recent years, we've realized we are all better together. And it is all of us here enterprise-wide as a county, but it's also with our regional partners. It's how are we addressing interjurisdictionally with community-based organizations? How are we partnering better with our partners and growing kind of these shared priorities so we can meet the needs of our community in the best way possible? And so a lot of this was driven by some of the work we got through EPA funding. That's the Environmental Protection Agency for our Priority Climate Action Plan, which is a regional plan around greenhouse gas emissions. And that plan set forth a coalition model by which we've got tribal partners, we've got jurisdictional partners to set our regional goals for greenhouse gas emissions. And as we defined the additional priorities, building upon SAPCO, but also integrating a lot more adaptation and resilience models, we wanted to do the same thing with all of these other priorities. And so Pima Can is what you'll start to see. And it really is our commitment to focus on reducing our regional impacts of climate change and how do we build a more adaptive community by which we know it's going to get hotter. We know our climate risks are increasing. Look at our wildfire and invasive species work. And become a lot more resilient and build into the resilience components that we can, where we have our water priorities, our landscape priorities, and our community priorities. So that's what you'll see in this plan. And so before we kind of dig into it, I want to just kind of walk through a bit of history, and none of this would be possible without our commitment of our Pima County Board of Supervisors and our Pima County leadership. Which you may or may not know is there have been 4 Pima County Board of Supervisors climate and sustainability resolutions adopted since 2017. Those resolutions really do dedicate us and our work to commit to greenhouse gas emissions reductions, net zero goals, sustainability priorities. 2022-25 was really the first time within those resolutions we reprioritize to say we will grow the sustainable action plan into a climate action plan to address things like extreme heat and other climate risk priorities. And most recently, the board adopted 2025-11 on May 6th, which sets the framework for the plan that you're going to hear about today. And that grows this plan into really strategic goals, and underscoring one of the biggest components of that resolution is that we are setting our greenhouse gas emissions target to 60% below 2021 levels, which is an increase from what we previously committed to, so that we can align ourselves and be a leader in the space to get to net zero by 2050. Formative years of the SAPCO plans from 2007 to 2024. And then the Pima Can and CAPCO. This is a little bit of what I said earlier, that all of these priorities now have a regional component. It's not just us
but the regional component helps inform our priorities. And then our county operations plan is us holding ourselves accountable from our operational footprint to achieve those goals collectively. So carbon, we'll start there. So the plan is really framed into mitigation priorities, into adaptation, and then into our resilience components. Like I said earlier, a part of this was formative work done by the work on the right column, which is our Pima County Regional Climate Action Plan, which is dedicated to carbon emissions specifically. This is where we frame out that we do have a shared goal across Pima County as a region to reduce our carbon emissions 60% by 2030 from 2021 levels. As you'll see on the right, kind of that breakout across the region, transportation is our #1 emissions producer. These are 2021 numbers just as a frame. Residential energy, industrial energy, commercial energy, wastewater, and solid waste are the lowest, and that's in a regional component. If you look to the left, this is our Pima County operations input. So our largest contributor is our facility. So it's really in that kind of commercial energy space. Our wastewater is our largest within that, and we'll talk about a lot of the innovation that's happening here on this campus and across our wastewater campuses. Our fleet, and that's previously what we have always measured. Because transportation emissions are the largest for the region, we said, all right, we've never included our commuter emissions. And so every year through the Pima Association of Governments, agencies do a travel reduction program survey. Historically, we've always had about just under 40% participation. So our goal this year is to bolster that participation into 80% participation so we can really understand our data around our commuter emissions to frame the rest of this plan, because we've never included this as an element before, and reduce that total load by 60%. What's really interesting is as we were developing the data goals for this plan, we had, I think, a half-day meeting in and around looking at the past SAPCO time period, 2018 to 2024. And what we had set and our successes in our emissions reductions over time, we actually exceeded our emissions reduction goals in part because of the great work that's been happening at the wastewater campus. But what we looked at year over year, and I'll remind everybody, lots of stuff happened after that plan was deployed. We had a pandemic. We had 3 of the hottest summers on record, each of which eclipsing the previous record. And we had a massive wildfire. And so designing plans where we were like, wow, because if you look at commuter emissions and our 2021 levels were at the height of the pandemic. So, thinking through things that you can't control for and thinking through ways to be adaptive and malleable as you develop current plans, in knowing that some of this work is informed by some of the events that have happened over the past 6 years that are climate risk driven. So it was a fascinating conversation about water use across our facilities, improved HVAC units and cooling units in hotter summers, but also as a component of public health and safety when we made some infrastructure improvements during the pandemic period. So we really kind of looked at all of the ways to model our emissions data. What we're prioritizing in this plan is really doing a full inventory across our complete inventory of buildings and operations to look at energy efficiency opportunities. For example, if we think about our capital inventory as either a letter grade, or we'll think about the health of our buildings. Where can we make strategic energy efficiency improvements to buildings that are maybe slightly underperforming, but they're doing well in energy efficiency because we can add renewable energy sources. We can look at ways that are cost effective to improve our energy efficiency, but also have the true baseline data of our capital and infrastructure improvement needs. So that's kind of our first year priority in this space. And through that inventory period, kind of set forth through our integrated infrastructure plans, what are the priorities and what are shared net benefit
for infrastructure improvements that also meet our climate goals. And I'm sure you've heard much about what wastewater is doing. We've been working really closely with Jeff and the wastewater team to look at investments that are already in play, all of the successes and how we're kind of looking at aeration improvements and energy efficiency there, improved use of biogas, and how can we integrate the great innovative work that's happening on this campus. Fleet, we did a tremendous effort in our SAPCO period, and so we're looking to where we can still convert to hybrid where appropriate. And we're also looking at energy efficiency in route planning. So thinking about how we use GIS to make sure our fleet is going in the most efficient route possible. We're also doing some really cool stuff in materials and fleet, but I'll wait till I get to that section. So that's a little bit of our priorities for carbon and energy for the upcoming 5 years, in knowing that there are a lot of regional components. So our other mitigation priority is waste and materials. And we retained a lot of what already existed in the SAPCO, but we really enhanced it. And so we've always had across our offices, are we using recycled materials? What we also wanted to open the door for was, are we being innovative in our use of materials? And so fleet is kind of leading the way in this space. One thing that we are doing and exploring for our fleet is using soy-based tires, which is really cool. And they're, I think, the same cost, if not more cost effective to regular tires and far more environmentally friendly. So how can we really innovate in this space? How do we consider pool pavement if appropriate and start to like explore the cost benefit analysis of these really opportunity-driven materials that we use? Obviously, we want to reduce our tonnage of solid waste in the landfill from our operations. And we really want to enhance our recycling. We want to make sure that our recycled materials are actually, we are measuring by weight of the recycled materials that are coming off of our campus, doing education programs to kind of promote that. And I think the final thing is exploring how to mitigate in our printing space. So that is waste and materials, and those are kind of our two: carbon and energy. Waste and materials are our mitigation strategies within our climate plan, but we're going to go into adaptation to climate risks. So extreme heat and wildfire and invasive species have always danced around our sustainable action plan for county operations, but the past 5 years have been exceptional and have been driven by governor directed orders, heat and safety planning, and we really had I want to give a huge shout out and accolades to our teams that are working in these two spaces, especially extreme heat right now. In 2023, well, I'll give some fast stats. In 2020, it was our hottest year on record to date. We also were coupled with the Bighorn fire that year. Then 2023, we saw the highest frequency of high heat days. 2024, the governor did issue a directive across the state that we collectively have to deal with extreme heat, and directed it towards our public health agencies, which are statute mandated, as you know, and a function of the county. So 2024, we deployed a region-wide in partnership, City of Tucson, and Pima County Health Department, U of A, all leaders in the space, to collectively join forces for what we call the heat relief network and our joint heat action teams. City of Tucson also has their heat specific plan. And there's been a ton of work to deploy cooling center networks by which we've served thousands and thousands of residents through libraries, through community-based organizations, homeless shelters, and done a ton of work in providing cooling resources to some of our most vulnerable community members. We similarly have, especially over 2025, with the lessons learned from 2024, done a lot of outreach. And this is led in part by City of Tucson and Red Cross, doing door-to-door work to kind of, do you know your neighbors? Do you have heat relief resources? Going to mobile home parks and folks that are at risk, and really looking at kind of resiliency in this space. So we've bolstered this, and as you know, 2024 was the hottest year on record. We had over 112 days, over 100 degrees last year going into October.
And so really, how do we adapt to a hotter temperature? Over the SAPCO period, from the data that we have, we know every single year, each year had about 7 more 100+ degree days. So year over year, adding about a week over the time period. And how we measure summer now is April through October. So for county operations, we really want to bolster the cooling center network capacity. We want to help them utilize their data, their utilization data. How are we making sure we're getting cooling network resources to the areas or pockets that we know are vulnerable that don't have a cooling resource yet? How are we looking at power outages? How are we just continuing to help bolster that capacity through our county operations? So health department, libraries, CWDs doing a ton of work in this space, and our community-based agencies. So the other two things that were really notable about last year is policies around workforce protections. So we developed an administrative procedure for our workforce and heat preparedness and heat safety efforts, but we also deployed an ordinance. We did a ton of public feedback gathering for that ordinance, for our contracted workforce to make sure that they had heat safety plans. We worked with labor unions, we worked with small business communities, we worked with public feedback gathering, and we did a survey across our county employees, to which over 1,500 employees responded to what is a priority for them for heat safety, and reflected all of that data within the administrative procedure and ordinance. Notably, Attorney General Chris Mays also submitted public comment to that ordinance, and solidified some of those details, which were finalized by the Pima County Board of Supervisors last September. The other thing that the heat team really wants to prioritize is using their data to help inform other chapters of this plan, and how do we invest in green infrastructure in high heat priority areas that have higher heat indices or heat islands that may be spaces for opportunity. Wildfire and invasive species has deployed a huge effort over the recent year, especially in light of Bighorn, in light of Lahaina, and in light of the LA fires, and how do we bolster our emergency preparedness. I'll have you know that these two priorities have their own plans that are region-based. We are, again, I'll underscore, the plan here is our county operations. How do we hold ourselves accountable from what we do here at the county? So wildfire and invasive species, our board just reviewed and approved our wildfire mitigation plan, and the region is going through the community wildfire protection plan. So there is emergency response components to that. What the county is going to take on is the role of the invasive species and grasses remediation. And so, as we know, there's tons of invasive species across the county. We don't have the data around it in full. But we are a very large organization, and we have many departments that are doing invasive species work, from our conservation land resources to Parks and Rec to transportation. And so what we have always proposed in the wildfire mitigation plan is that we have an administrative procedure around all of our department efforts in buffalo grass and stink net, any invasive species remediation. It is in our Pima Prospers. But that we not only have an administrative procedure, but as we remediate, how do we GIS track priority areas and overlay that data over what's happening in the wildfire risk space. This is an effort that is bolstered by community partners, the U of A, Sonoran Institute, Desert Museum. This is a full court press effort to kind of help in the wildfire remediation space. And if we can contribute a robust set of data, because we've got a 7,000 person workforce and many county departments that are already doing this, that only helps benefit the collective work in this space. And then we obviously have the power of the communication and outreach strategies as a governmental entity. So we have a communications plan that's strategized over the year about how you can do remediation on your own properties and how you can kind of get the resources you need. So that is our adaptation. And so climate resilience, we typically kept water and landscapes separate and unique. And we really kind of folded them into, no pun intended, a fluid connection point. And we really bolstered our water priorities. And so previously in the SAFCO, we kind of, because it's county operations, obviously, we really looked at how are we going to reduce our
water use over our county facilities. How are we gonna enhance our furniture, fixtures and equipment, line items to make sure that we're using the most efficient ones? And then kind of monitoring acreage. And a lot of our water priorities lived more so in landscapes. And so we moved those into what is now overseen by the Water Working Group, which is a collection of county departments, which include flood control, wastewater and reclamation. We've got Parks and Rec, we've got conservation land resources, and it's a really integrated team who set the priorities. As you know, we surveyed a lot of our county departments. When I reported to you last, we were in the surveying process of here's what the community has said through our priority climate action plan. Obviously, heat, water, emissions were the big priorities. County departments, what are your priorities from your personal lane, but also your county department hat lane? Water obviously was one of the first. Extreme heat was, if not first, second. And so, but water really showed up in a big way from a conservation, growth of supply. How are we looking at demand, and how are we investing our water resources and getting creative to reduce that demand and use alternate water supplies where appropriate, and really documenting that in a data-driven way. There's a lot of innovative work that's happening across the county in water. How do we bolster that? How do we become enthusiastic practitioners of what we're saying and what we're doing and telling the community about it? And then how are we framing that in an evaluative way? And so that really frames into 4 priorities. How do we augment our water supply with stormwater? That looks like stormwater parks, detention basins, adding a little bit more acreage to all of those, and investment into projects that are already happening, and prioritizing projects in areas where appropriate and in need. How do we continue to promote the sustainable use of effluent? So how are we using reclaimed water in a data-driven way across our own green spaces? So not all of our parks yet are on reclaims. A lot of them are, but some of that has to do with infrastructure. Some of that will be reflected in the Pima County Parks and Recs master plan, which they are working on right now, for board consideration. But how do we kind of invest in the infrastructure to get more of our green spaces onto reclaimed and have that inventory be a little bit more robust? It already is, and I think there's a lot of work being done in that space. And then managing demand for the water across our county operations. How are we really doing, just like the buildings component? How do we have a full and final inventory and measurement? But also, how are we looking at the community? It was mentioned earlier, there was a lot of discussions this summer about high demand water users and new industry types, and how do we account for that, manage for that, adjust for that, and how do we kind of measure for that? Our Board of Supervisors did just adopt a policy in and around kind of environmental reviews for new industry types. We want to commit to that board policy and kind of look at those environmental reviews, whether it be high energy use, high water use, and how do we advocate or plug in where appropriate to kind of reduce that demand, or what are those kind of pressing needs that we're seeing through these environmental review processes. So that was really exciting. And then how do we promote water sustainability, innovation, and connection between water and landscapes? This is really our green infrastructure investment, and that also connects to workforce. So landscapes, we are really focusing on our conservation efforts, and this looks like urban landscapes, tree augmentation. We have a goal to plant 10,000 trees, but we also have a goal to kind of create an opportunity map on green infrastructure investment and waterways and detention basins. And that connects to a lot of the stuff that exists in the water chapters. We previously had a very robust food systems section of our landscapes. We have retained some of our working ranch farmland preservation. As you know, we have Buckley Farms, which is amazing, and they're doing a lot of work under conservation lands resources in the Buckley Farm space. But we have a goal to kind of think about food policy systems and think about our operations and our land resources to how we can plug into food systems and grow it where appropriate for Pima County. Climate and community are really representative of lenses by which we think about this work. 3 major tenets of this work are climate and environmental stewardship are a public health priority. They all affect public health. So how do we lean into the public health
data-driven work in this space. So we know our public health department obviously is overseeing our heat relief efforts, but they also have our community health needs assessment. They have epidemiologic data. They can really put this frame over what the public health impact is over a lot of these climate priorities. The second is economic vitality and environmental stewardship. I mentioned our board policy in and around environmental review, but how do we partner with economic development priorities, businesses, community members to continue to make climate and sustainability a priority community-wide? We recently presented in front of the industry was really like commercial real estate. And so saying, hey, we are Pima County, the government, but we are also Pima County, the operations. We have a list of capital assets just like you do. And how do we think about things like return on investment, cost savings by making life a little bit more energy efficient and sustainable? And so how do we kind of partner, walk the walk, and also work with our economic development entities? And finally, workforce is huge. It's very well represented in this plan, but also our regional plan and some of the work that exists. And how do we grow the workforce pipeline, do training programs, work with our community workforce development teams for those programs. But also we have a program called the Green Stewards. How do we inform our 7,000 person workforce to engage and learn about what wastewater is doing, learn about what conservation lands resources are doing, and we're trying to make it really engaging for and accessible for all of our Pima County staff. And finally, we have a way, so you don't have to memorize this whole presentation. At some point, we are going to have a beautiful website, which will be live very, very soon. Which is a way to engage in each of these priority areas. And you can dive into extreme heat, you can dive into water, you can dive into anything. This front page will be probably more community public driven as an orientation. And it's also going to provide critical links. So here's our cooling center network, here's our Beat the Heat page, here's how to get utility assistance if you need in all of these priorities. As you go up to the top, upon adoption by our Pima County Board of Supervisors after consideration, the plan will live here. It's not intended to live as a plan that gets printed out and sits. It's intended, and I guess I said all of those things way too early. As we know, through our last APCO period, when we had an unplanned pandemic and an unplanned wildfire and an unplanned excessive heat streak, how do we adapt where appropriate when things happen that we can't account for? So how do we set our goals high, but also be able to pivot if there is a new climate risk that we need to respond to across the community, like the Extreme Heat Initiative? And so it will live alive here on this website, which will be interactive and is intended to be kind of, you can dig into whatever priority that you want to see and engage with us. You'll get our Pima County newsletter on climate work, and it'll all tie to one big Pima Climate Action Now brand. But this slide is probably my favorite. It is as important, if not more important than the plan itself. There are over 25 county departments that engage in this work and over 55 staff members that have put their time, commitment, effort into this work. And there are hundreds more that have contributed to this work indirectly, whether they realize it or not. I think everyone in this room has indirectly, if not directly, contributed to this plan. And it is an honor to work with all these people. You see me giving this presentation. However, I am just a speaker box to the tremendous work that's being done day in and day out across these county departments. And it is a delight to continue to further this, take their feedback, implement it as strategies to make sure that their voice and their work is represented across this enterprise-wide approach. And with that, I will take any questions. I tried to go very fast.
Thank you very much. And we do have a few minutes for questions, but we do have to give a few things more on the agenda today. That was an excellent presentation. It's great to know what's happening with this project. So Any questions or comments that people have? Ah, yes, we have one from Steve. Yes. Go ahead, Steve. You're muted, Steve. Still muted.
It shows that he's not muted. Okay, I think you just need to speak up, Steve.
No, it's not coming through.
All type things.
You can call them.
He can call it or he can type it in the chat.
Yeah, perhaps your microphone's not working.
Steve, you wanna just type your comment in the chat? Does anybody else have a question?
Does anybody else have a comment or question? I'll comment that it's great to see water broken out from landscaping. Before it, and I guess Project Blue really helped, realize why that was so important, but, it's really good, especially from our perspective on, from wastewater. It's nice to see that pulled out as its own thing. So that's great. I also really appreciate the wildfire work that you're doing. So,
Does the wildfire mitigation, is that in concert with that group called Firewise?
That they have Firewise as a component to bolster Firewise education. So that team works very closely with state agencies
Right.
to help deploy more Firewise resources. So that's included in the wildfire mitigation plan.
Okay.
Jeanette, where would the chat show up here? Oh, trying to find it.
Right.
Yeah, but I don't.
I'm sure.
Yeah. So people, okay, so he's typing, he's typing.
I can see you typing, Steve, so go ahead.
Might be something about his microphones.
Yeah, his mic is just not working.
Yeah.
Well, Steve, we will look out for your question and answer it, but I'll defer my seat to Jeff. Jeff, who's next?
Up here. What is, no,
What is the unit MTCO2E?
Metric tons of carbon emission equivalent.
Boy, that was good. Thank you. Got it?
all right.
Oh,
Thank
okay.
you so much.
Let
Really
me
appreciate
switch
you
up.
coming in. We're gonna move on to the DOE's Better Plants, Better Climate Program, and that's Jeff.
Right, there you go.
I like to stand, so Kimberly's been heavily involved in this, and was Nate on my staff as well. So, go to the next slide. So in 2013, that's when Tres Rios and Agua Nueva came online. And so facilities we used to have weren't large energy consumers. When we built these two large facilities, they're 5 stages of water, very expensive to operate. A lot of aeration goes in there, a lot of there's blowers. We have a total of 8 blowers, very high horsepower. That's the biggest expense that we have is for aerating those basins. And so in 2014, we signed on with DOE as a 10-year commitment to reduce our carbon emissions or our energy intensity by 25% over 10 years. So that's when we joined up with Better Plants. Better Plants has 3 different categories. They have the energy intensity. They also have a Better Plants Challenge. We've gone to numerous conferences where we share our findings. Other entities do as well. We learn from one another. We share our experiences. And then now the Better Climate Challenge, it's right aligned with what Sarah's been talking about, the county's challenge. So we're just kind of waiting to see where it went at, but it's really targeted at climate reductions, greenhouse gas emissions. So next slide. So based on our 2014 goals of 25%, we achieved that in just 8 years. We're at about a 35% reduction right now. And the biggest gains we've made little incremental steps along the way. We've implemented some AI machine learning at Agua Nueva. We've changed some of our processes at Trace Rios and at some of our facilities. With Jim Doyle's here, he works with our process optimization team. We do it at our smaller facilities as well. But in 2023, our own staff looked at how we program our SCADA operations at Trace Rios and did a different sequencing of blowers. I mentioned we have 8 blowers. Those are our highest energy consumers. Each time a blower turns on, they're 600 horsepower, 1,000 horsepower. And so it's incremental. Each time they go up, the energy doubles, triples, quadruples. So what did here, Larry reprogrammed how they turn on, how they sequence to give us greater turn down, which saved a substantial savings there. Now we're in the process of retrofitting all those blowers. We're putting in turbo blowers with VFDs. So it's no longer on or off this incremental cost. We can slowly ramp them up and down. So that's the new industry. These facilities were built in 2013. That technology is already obsolete. We've already moved into more energy efficient ones. Next slide. So we have a 38% overall to wastewater departments for all of our facilities. Some of our early successes when these plants did come online, we can decommission the Randolph Park facility. That was a high energy consumer. It used UV for disinfection and membrane in our process. Very expensive to operate. It was cheaper for us to mothball that facility to build that extra capacity at a larger facility because we got that economy of scale. Those are some early wins. Now we're in the meat of trying to retrofit equipment. Next slide. So here's 2 projects that I have on the screen that I'll bring up, this one and the next one. Corona de Tucson. This one is a neat project. Art helped us get this underway, and so did procurement. Traditionally, when we do upgrades of facilities, we do either design build or CMAR. And so we go through the process, give it to a contracting firm, we get all the way through design, and then we say, oh no, we can't afford it. So then we start value engineering, throwing things out to skin it down to fit our budget. And it's a tough way to do business. So on this small project here, we looked at doing a different alternative delivery method. It's called performance-based contracting through 1GPA. And so in this instance, the way Arizona state regs are written, the savings for the upgrade you're doing have to offset the capital costs. So it should be revenue neutral over whether you're financing over a 10-year, 15, 20-year term. And so there's incentive on the builder, the designer, they go out, they look for rebates, grants, all types of stuff to get the capital costs low. They try to maximize the energy savings so they can net out. They don't net out, it's a no-go project. Which means then I have to go back to the traditional ones, design, build, or CMAR. So it delays. This is a way to get a project delivered quicker. And so the firm is actually acting as an owner's advocate to reduce that capital cost up front. So you get that value engineering at the very front end versus going all the way through the design, then having to backtrack. So what we're doing right now, we just put on at Corona de Tucson, we've been running 1 reactor instead of 2 for years. Our flows are just about at 500,000 right now. So we put 2 reactors in service. We're putting in those turbo blowers that I mentioned before, putting in different type of diffusers to be more efficient for the air induction in that system. But this property you see to the right there, to the east side, that's all going to be solar based. So this plant will then now be powered with solar. We'll have more efficient aeration energy in there as well. We're expanding and putting in a foreign contact chamber for disinfection, essentially doubling it. All these things will be netted out by the cost of the savings. So it's kind of a neat way to do it. We dipped our toe in it at this facility right now. It was a small amount. I think it's like $7 million. But this could be a way that we open up this now for all county operations, and Art was very helpful in that. Counties never use this delivery method for projects. We've used it to buy solar installations and stuff like that, but not for construction. It's kind of a neat way to do it. They do a lot of schools and a lot of libraries were using this method to do upgrades. And now we're seeing it venture into our wastewater market, which is kind of neat. Next slide. So here are some big changes at Trace Rios, our biggest facility down the street. We're building a new digester right now. New digesters are about $30 million. We need additional digester capacity. This Ponda system, this is a chemical thermal hydrolysis. It's gonna reduce the sludge volume by about 40%, which means I mean fewer digesters, so I make better capacity of the digesters I have right now. It also reduces the sludge viscosity, and it produces about 30% more biogas production. You know, we take our biogas, we clean it up, we inject it in the pipeline and sell it for revenues. So this is another revenue source for us, resource recovery here. Waste heat recovery. Traditionally, waste heat recovery, you run your hot water through some kind of a cooling loop, cool it down, or to heat it up. Those blowers that we use at Tres Rios, they produce heat that's about 250 degrees. So this is the first installation that is done on any wastewater facility nationwide. We're building these huge heat exchangers that will go on the air ducts. We're taking that 250 degree heat, converting it to hot water, not the opposite of what people typically use heat exchangers for. And so we'll be doing this. This should recover about 30% of all the natural gas that we use on site for heating boilers to make hot water. We're gonna recover from this waste heat. And in turn, that'll make the cooler temperatures in our reactors, which will help our biological process as well. And we're replacing the blowers with the VFD turbo blowers. So these three things right here, we think are gonna make a tremendous impact in the future CAPCO reporting that we do and DOE reporting. This is our largest facility, this is our largest primary scale. I think that's the last one. Yeah. Any questions? Yes.
Your work on Corona de Tucson. If I'm understanding correctly, in about 2030, we're looking 2031, we're gonna have the new Saharita plant up and running. And the object is to suck in Arivaca, Green Valley, Corona de Tucson through that plant.
Probably not Corona de Tucson.
Probably not.
The cost of that pipeline is gonna be astronomical to get it there. Okay, Tucson water is already managed, right, over to this big Tucson area. They want the water to remain because they're gonna do a advanced water treatment that.
Okay.
The only big Tucson will probably remain in our life.
Okay, so then what I'm hearing is Tucson is reaching out to grab some of that land territory and they'll use it for their water rights, and the sewer that's there, the facility will then, it'll be under our control, but for their use.
Yeah, Corona Tucson will continue to grow, but it's too far.
Okay.
It's not economical for that fact.
Okay.
All right, any more
Thanks.
questions?
Is there any more questions from anybody? Thank you very much. Appreciate it. All right, we're going to move on to the RBC Capital Markets presentation. Oh, no, is that right? Yes, yes.
It is.
Kirkford.
You said the wrong thing.
Yeah, Chair Director, I will make some introductory remarks. I do want to be sensitive to time.
Yes.
It's 9:30. I know you have 4 items, 4, 3 or 4.
Most of these will be pretty quick.
Okay, I just want
Yeah.
to make sure, you know, because I was planning on about 20-ish minutes.
Yeah. Okay. I think we don't really have a lot of reports from the other.
We don't have any subcommittee reports.
Such as Isai.
It's, Isai will be quick, so I
Okay.
think you're fine.
All right.
I think you're okay.
The other alternative is, there's a lot of information that we can present and we can talk on this for quite a while. So what I was going to offer the committee was maybe to do, if 20 minutes doesn't feel like it's sufficient time, we can convene a special meeting where we take maybe an hour and we can go into it at a little more depth with a little more detail. I'm happy to provide the presentation that we have today, but also happy to schedule additional time if the committee would like that.
Okay, let's go on with
absolutely.
today's, and then I think the other ones they often are very short, and I think we haven't had a lot of meetings, so.
Yeah,
Go
okay.
ahead.
So this meeting is a follow-up, if I can take you back to my beginning of my tenure with this committee back in December and January. There was a lot of talk about the pillars and how if the pillars were the right pillars for the utility, if the reserves were set at the right amount. And wanted to understand how that all fit together with the financial plan and how that impacts the bond financing program that we have at the county, and then more specifically for the wastewater utility. So we have Kurt Freund, Michelle's on as well, she'll help me, and we have Tom Carlson on the line from RBC Capital Markets. They are the financial advisor for Pima County, and they've been so for, I think, 25 or 30 years. Kurt, Tom, shake your head, yeah, that's about the time that you've been with the county. And so I'm gonna open with some remarks, and then I'm gonna get out of the way and let them talk about what you're all really interested in hearing. Next slide, please. I feel like I'm at the board meeting here. So we'll go through that. That's just who we are. So as far as an agenda, I want to talk about the overview of the 4 pillars for background and context. I want to talk a little bit about the importance of those pillars on the financial operations of the utility and how that impacts the operational management of the utility from Jackson's perspective and Jeff and Hyman's perspective. They do a really good job of the operation of the utility from a financial perspective. I'll then turn it over to Kurt and Tom to talk about how the operational success of the utility impacts and generates a successful bond financing program. And then I'll tie that back into how that impacts the ratepayers, which is why we're all worried about this and concerned about this from the ratepayer perspective. Next slide. So the overview of the 4 pillars, pillar 1 was to optimize sewer rates and cash reserves. Pillar 2 was to establish a debt service coverage ratio. Pillar 3 was to establish a countywide pay-as-you-go policy. This is really has an impact on our amortization of our debt periods. We can talk about that on the next slide. Pillar 4 is to prepay existing debt with excess cash, with specific to the utility for expenditure limitation purposes primarily. So next slide. So what do the pillars do and how do they impact financial operations? Well, pillar 1 optimizes cash reserves, which is an important liquidity measure and metric for our rating agencies that rate our bonds. If you think about a rating agency similar to like a TransUnion or an Equifax, for us personally, they establish the county's credit rating, which we then use to go out and obtain the lowest cost debt for our ratepayers. As you all remember, there are 3 different cash reserve limits that are set. We have a $20 million emergency reserve that was established by the Board of Supervisors in 2010. We have a day's cash on hand liquidity reserve. This is critical to the rating agency's view of our liquidity. I think at the end of 24, that number was about $23.5 million. And then we have a debt service reserve fund that's required in each issuance that we do. And there's a calculation of it, and it's 1/2 of the maximum annual debt service of that issue. We put that away. That's per the bond covenant, so that we're required to do that. Again, all of these cash reserves help paint a picture to the bond rating agencies that we are well prepared for any financial emergency that may arise in the utility. Pillar 2 establishes a 1.3 times coverage ratio as the sole debt service coverage ratio for the utility. As Kurt will talk about in a minute, they are separate and distinct from how the rating agencies look at our debt service ratio. There's 2 distinct ratios. This helps in our operations because the calculation is net revenue plus unrestricted cash balances over our debt service payments. Net revenues are obviously your gross revenues minus your expenditures to get to that net revenue number. And so the better that the utility department manages its operational expenditures, combined with the strategic and timely rate increases that we take before the Board of Supervisors, and then have the Board of Supervisors ultimately adopt, lead to that numerator in that calculation. Pillar 3, the debt amortization periods limited to 15 years or less. And I think the utility here has been in that 15-year or less, for each of the previous 5 years and probably even longer dating back to Kurt's tenure with the county. So that's the denominator in that equation. And so by keeping that debt short, it does add a little bit of pressure to, but by keeping the debt short, it does help ratepayers in terms of achieving lower interest costs on our debt.
Okay, great. Thank you. See you in a while.
Pillar
Bye.
Pillar 4, this is in Pima County does Pillar 4 in terms of prepaying our existing debt with excess cash. Because we issued debt to avoid our expenditure limitation. The expenditure limitation is a state statute that limits how much Pima County can spend of its overall revenues. Last year, we got under that limit by $1. So we need to be very cognizant of this, and debt proceeds and debt revenues are not considered part of that, which is why the county issues costs for our general fund improvements and why we issue sewer revenue obligations for our utility, to make sure that we stay under that limit, and then also using that cash to defease, pay off bonds that are callable when it's prudent to do so. And I think we've averaged about $19 million a year in paying off our debt early. So again, painting that picture of how our pillars guide our financial operations and how Jeff and Jackson and Jaime and their teams are managing from the expenditure side all leads to the positive metrics and a positive bond program that I'll turn over to Kurt to talk about as far as what the metrics are, what the rating agencies look for, and the importance of maintaining these. I will say before he jumps on that the wastewater utility was upgraded in our bond rating this year. The higher the rating, the lower the interest cost on your debt. It's similar to your credit rating. If you're at an 840, you're going to get all of the top credit offers. And then as you climb down that rating pole, the more expensive the debt is, right? You equate that to, our daily lives, so to speak. So you can turn to the next slide. So how does this impact and create a successful bond program? I'll turn it over to Kurt and Tom, because I know you're waiting to hear from him more than me.
Great. Good morning. All thanks, Howard. Can you hear me okay?
We hear you.
Okay, super. Good morning to all of you. I apologize that I'm not down there with you in person. Art and I debated whether I should come down, and we decided that we'd be kind to the environment and not have me drive down from Phoenix, which is where Tom and I are located. But at some future meeting, I'm happy to come down if you all want to discuss these issues more. One thing I would add, just listening to Art, because it might be a benefit to the committee members. The 4 pillars that Art described, those have been in place for at least 10 years, probably going on 15 years now. They really came into place when the county went forward with the major improvements to the wastewater system more than 10 years ago. And they were designed to sort of create a financial structure that was going to work, recognizing that there was a rapid increase in the amount of infrastructure that was being put in at that time, and therefore a rapid increase in the amount of debt that was being incurred, and therefore an increase in rates. And so it was trying to balance all that, get the county to a situation where its credit ratings were strong, not the highest level, but close to the highest level, that those ratings were consistent with what you'd find for other major counties, either in Arizona or around the country, similar to the ratings for the city of Tucson in terms of the water system, as an example, and would get you a very effective borrowing rate when you went to borrow, because if you can keep your borrowing rate low, particularly given that you're putting in a lot of capital infrastructure, that yields lower rates for ratepayers when all is said and done. So that was sort of the overall theory of it. On this slide, we've summarized the key credit rating strengths of the county's wastewater system as reflected by the two rating agencies that rate the county's credit. So that's Standard & Poor's and Fitch. And as Art mentioned, the county has very solid ratings. They're at the AA level from Standard & Poor's. They were at the same AA level from Fitch, but Fitch upgraded the credit just recently to a AA plus, as Art mentioned. I tell you that each rating agency has their own approach to assessing the county's credit, but they generally look at it and review the same factors. And I won't go through all of the bullets on this page, but if you look at them in your spare time, these are pulled directly from the published credit rating reports that the rating agencies do. So it's out there. We can make those reports available to you if you like. But you'll note that there's several similarities in there. One, there's a focus on liquidity issues or cash balances and reserves. And Art talked a little bit about that in talking about the pillars. But liquidity is a key credit factor, and the rating agencies note that the county has a very solid level of liquidity. One way you look at liquidity is you look at days cash on hand as just one metric that they look at, recognizing that they look at a lot of different variables when they look at these credits. A second key thing you'll find on this page is there's a focus on debt service coverage levels or leverage in assigning the rating. And when we look at debt service coverage levels, they look at it taking a lot of things into consideration. Art mentioned in his comments that when we're working on it with county staff and with the advisory committee and with the board, we're looking at really net revenues of the system, revenues less expenses, and comparing that to the annual debt service payment. And you're trying to get to a coverage level of 1.3, 1.35, somewhere in that range is where we budget at. The rating agencies will do a lot of different things. They'll say, well, fine, we'll look at that. But let's also look at if there were no connection fee revenues, what would the numbers look like? And they do that because they go, well, look, connection fee revenues are a much more variable revenue stream. Or they'll say, let's add in the pension liability of employees of the wastewater system because pensions are a form of debt. They're not like the bonds that are issued, but they are a form of debt. And so they look at coverage in a lot of different ways. It's a very key factor. They also look at service rates and how affordable are the rates given the income levels of the community in which they're looking at the credit. And so they'll look at that. And they focus on future capital infrastructure needs. You have a large ramp up over the next 5-year period in capital infrastructure needs associated with the Wastewater plant. And so they'll look at that and say, okay, well, how does that work with your numbers? And then lastly, it's not listed here, but they do focus on management capability and competency, both at the board level, but also management of the wastewater system. And, are you on top of what needs to be done? Are you dealing with PFAS issues? Are you repairing the system appropriately? Are you adjusting rates if needed? So those are the things that they look at. If you turn to the next page, just to get into a little bit more detail, on this page, we've summarized a number of the key metrics that we look at RBC as the financial advisor to the county, but the rating agencies also look at it when reviewing the credit. And in conducting this analysis, the agencies look at really where does the county stack up compared to the median levels for other sewer utility systems around the country that are rated at a similar level. And so ratings are less about, are you going to repay the debt? And they're more about how strong is the credit vis-a-vis other credits. They're a relative indication of credit quality. And so they look at things like debt service coverage that we've talked about. And you'll find that the county's debt service coverage is pretty noticeably below the median coverage level for AA credits around the country. As an example, I put it in here. Standard & Poor's shows the coverage the county has at a 1.5 times level based on how they calculate it. Importantly, if you compare that to the median for AA rated credits, they're at a 2.2 times coverage level. So they have more net revenues covering debt service than the county does by a pretty significant factor. You'd have to drop down to an A-rated credit to get to a 1.5 times median level, just to give you a feel. Another key metric, as I mentioned, is liquidity levels, and they look at days cash on hands as one way to measure this. And while they note that the county's debt service days cash on hand is solid at 496 days is what it was at based on 2024 financial data, audited financial data. It's below the level for similarly rated credits. They have higher levels of liquidity. You can see here, we put on the slide that the median for AA credits was at 631 days in 2024. So that's not to say that the county's liquidity levels aren't good. They're great, quite frankly, but they're not as high as the medians. And again, thinking about relative credit value. They also look at things like the unemployment rate, where the county is on par with the medians. They look at wealth metrics, a couple of them, buying income and poverty rate. And you can see, looking at the bullet points here, that the county is not as strong as what you see for other AA credits around the country. Again, not necessarily bad, but just a metric that you're looking at. And lastly, they assess sewer rates. And they look at how those stack up compared to wealth levels. And so you can see here the county's annual utility bill. This is again based on 2024 data because they use the most recent audited financial statements. But the annual utility bill was 0.8% of the buying income that they calculate for the county. Perfectly fine. But lower than the median, which was at 1.1% for other similarly rated utility systems across the country. So you look at all these factors when assessing the credit of the county, and I've used this line with county management before and others, but when you look at it, the county basically boxes above its weights class, right? So it isn't at the levels that the medians are for other AA rated credits. It's lower on debt service coverage. It's lower on days cash on hand. Its poverty rate's a little higher. Its buying income's a little lower, but yet you're rated at a AA. So that's why I say you sort of box over your weight class. And there's a lot of reasons for that. When we go through and work with county management on presenting the county's credit to rating agencies, we note the population growth in the county, which has been strong over a long period of time. We note where the economy is and where job growth is. We talk about the short-term debt amortization. That's one of your pillars, where the county's policy, not just for wastewater, but for all debt, has been to borrow for 15 years or less. We look at the rate levels, which are generally reasonable, and really what you look at when you start looking at rates is where are they relative to buying income and where are they relative to wealth indicators? Because the more room you have there, the more there's an ability to raise rates if you needed to. That's not to suggest that you want to raise rates. No one wants to do that. But if you had to, if you're looking at, hey, do I get my bonds repaid? Knowing that there's flexibility there is a helpful thing. Let's see, next slide, Art, please. And then lastly, one of the things that I think is very helpful sort of to be mindful of regarding ratings and credit is to have a sense of what could lead to a downgrade or a lowering of the system's credit ratings. And again, having lower ratings in and of itself isn't necessarily bad, but it comes with a cost. It means you have to borrow at higher interest rates. And that means that puts more pressure on rates, or that you got to decrease expenditures, or that you got to decrease capital program. And so you're balancing all those things when you're looking at it. But I think it's useful to look at what the rating agencies say, again, straight from their published reports, as to what puts downward pressure on the rating. And so you can see those listed here. And again, they're pretty similar between the two agencies. And they're pretty narrowly focused, quite frankly. One is a material decline in debt service coverage, or an increase in leverage. An increase in leverage yields a decline in debt service coverage, right? If you borrow more, the denominator is going up. If the numerator stays the same, the coverage goes down. So that's one factor that they look at, and that's why we focus on debt service coverage when we're looking at building, when the county looks at building the budget and the financial plan. They also flag an unexpected drawdown or a decline in reserves or days cash on hand would put pressure on the ratings. So we've talked about, and your committee has talked about, hey, do we need all these reserves? Like, we have a fair amount of reserves. Well, the short answer, in my opinion, is yes, you do, if you want to maintain the ratings at the levels they're at, because your days cash on hand isn't even at the median levels. It's at a lower rating category. And then lastly, you see mention of a weakening financial profile due to either a failure to adjust rates if and when needed, or a general decline in the county's overall credit quality. And I'll speak to both of those. If I'm on the advisory commission, if I'm on the board of soups, if I'm in county management, of course I don't want to raise rates, and I have to be very thoughtful and careful and cautious about that. The view from a rating agency perspective is that it was a long time between raising rates. It was 8 years, right? And the increase in rates was not, it wasn't like 10% increases, it was 1.5% to 3%. So all of us, whether from our perspective or your guys' perspective, the board's perspective, want to keep rates as low as possible. And sort of what I say to rating agencies is, yeah, these are really responsible people, whether it's at the commission or at the board level. They'll raise rates if they need to, but they're not going to raise rates just because. And so, and I think that's been a good message and has worked well. That the general decline in the county's overall credit, that's a function of the fact that the wastewater enterprise, the wastewater system, is a department of the county. So if the county's credit goes to heck in a handbasket, that could have an impact on the wastewater system. And the county's credit going bad could be a fiscal issue, but in many cases, a declining credit quality is a sign of like decreasing population growth or decreasing economic conditions in the county. I don't think there's any risk of that, and it hasn't been for a long time. The county's overall credit rating has been very strong for the 30 plus years I've worked with the county. So I don't see that as a big risk, but it is a factor. So these are all the factors that we monitor in trying to maintain the ratings at the AA level. And as you'll note, and not surprisingly, given what I said at the front end, they're managing these factors is consistent with the 4 pillars that Art spoke to. And that's by design. And so, that's how that all fits together, if that's helpful. Art, maybe turn it back to you for slide 9.
Yeah, thank you. So final slide, I know we're coming up on time, but how does that all impact the ratepayers, right? So the pillars are constructed to ensure financial stability and sustainability of the utility, prioritizing that affordability to ratepayers while also balancing the need of the utility to maintain the levels that we're at. Adherence to these pillars will benefit in the short term and the long term. And how does that happen? It happens twofold, right? Rate increases, as Kurt mentioned, have been strategic and they've been timely. So we're not a utility that is out there every year just raising rates. We're judicious with it, where we ask when needed from the Board of Supervisors. And when it's timely to do so from our financial perspective, as we look at the rate plan, looking out 5 years. And then, you know, because of our financial and operational management of this utility over the years, that has led to reduced borrowing costs on financings. And the reality is, if you look at our 5-year plan moving forward, it's 496 million in capital. And most of that's gonna be debt financed. And when you look at wanting to reduce that cost of the taxpayer, you're looking at the rating, you're looking at the credit quality of the utility, and there are other factors. But these things all taken together help ratepayers by being able to reduce that borrowing cost over that 10 and 15-year period, which ultimately comes back to in the form of moderate rates to our ratepayers. I know I probably went way over time, but I'm happy to answer any questions that we have. Again, Chair, if you want us to come back, we included a lot of information in a short amount of time. We're happy to come back and take a more in-depth look. I do have some information back here for anybody that wants to read the methodologies that the rating agencies use to rate our debt. I'll leave a couple with you and you can read them as nighttime reading material.
What does our work program look like for next time? Because I do think that, given our financial discussions before, it'd be good to have time to really talk about some of these things. I don't know that we need to schedule a separate meeting for that.
In November, we have Mark Taylor coming in for the CIP presentation. We have long-range plans. That's usually pretty extensive. That's PAG, Pima Prospers, and the IAP.
Right, that's all those.
We have Jaime doing the 5 and 10-year CIP overview. Then we have just the approval of the work plan for next year. We do have space in December though,
Okay,
because that's just work plan approval, comms presentation and quarterly vacancy.
let's
Yeah,
let's bring it back in December. If you don't mind coming back in December. I know Matt has a comment. Go ahead and Matt, and then we'll continue this discussion.
Thank you. I don't have any specific questions or comments for Kurt or Tom or Art or Michelle. And the main reason is they took the time to meet with Eric and me last week for about an hour and a half and answered a lot of questions, explained certainly what you just heard and a lot more. And I just wanted to acknowledge that and say thank you to Kurt and Tom for coming down to Tucson and spending the time with us last week. Very, very valuable, and look forward to future conversations.
Okay,
Thank you, Matt.
thank you, Matt. So how do other people feel about having them come back in December for at least a follow-up? Because we don't really have time now to talk about it, but I found this very useful.
This was fantastic.
I guess I do have some questions about, what are the things we want to look, and you don't need to answer this now, but what are the things we need as a committee to look out for as we, you know, in the running of the utility to ensure that this our rating stays high, given that we're boxing above our, what did he say? Boxing
Above our weight class.
boxing above our weight class. It sounds like there are operational things that are important in keeping us in that weight class. So
Yeah, we'll put some thought to that for the December meeting.
that would be great.
And just as a way of I know the financial subcommittee is meeting, I think it's the 3rd. And we will be bringing back, the board has asked for a reserve policy approval. I know that's something that we discussed, probably it's like my second day on the job.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
And so we will be bringing that back to the committee's consideration.
Okay.
That will then forward to the Board of Supervisors.
All right. Well, that's great. Great discussion. Anybody else have any comments? All right, we'll revisit this in December, but I appreciate that and I appreciate also want to acknowledge Matt and Eric for meeting with them and having that in-depth conversation. We appreciate that, your efforts as a board here to do that on your own.
So we need about another 5-10 minutes.
Thank you so much.
To just complete the agenda items. Is everybody okay with that?
Everybody stay a couple
5-10
minutes
For what?
to finish the agenda.
I have to leave at 10, so I'm out of here.
Okay,
Okay.
will we have,
The
do
only question,
Good, okay.
we have form then?
Yes.
Without?
Yeah.
Okay. We're gonna move on. Thank you, Eric. So we'll move on to Isai for the period 3 summary, expense and revenue summary.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Share my screen and we'll go through our summary for period 3, and it's not much have changed. Just for time's sake, we'll just resume this semi-quick. The department right now, we are projecting overall to come in almost a total revenue, overall coming up a budget for our expenses and for our revenue. Now, one of the biggest changes right now is the biogas revenue is still down. So we're projecting to come 1.3 under for the revenue for the biogas. Hopefully be coming up here by the end of the month. So we hope to recoup majority of the biogas revenue for that. But overall, also the ratings, we are at our budget at 1.32. So for time 6, that's where we stand for now. Questions?
Well,
Matt.
it is apparent that 1.32 is good from our previous presentation. Matt, you had a question or a comment? You're muted,
I
Matt.
believe you muted.
Sorry about that. Thank you. I was looking at the supplies and services line and noticing that something has happened in the first quarter to put the straight line forecast way above our budget level. And I just wondered if there's anything in particular that has been identified as what might have caused that spike this quarter.
There's some encumbrances. The department sometimes goes and encumbers, and some encumbrances come across from prior fiscal year. This is cleanup to be done on that aspect. So that's where we can see that spike is because of the encumbrances. And as we go throughout the year, we'll find out that some of those encumbrances sometimes are doubled. People double encumber the same product that they're trying to purchase or services. So we do some cleanup as we go along.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you, Isai. I appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
We're going to move on to the CIP subcommittee report. Oh, sorry, financial subcommittee report. Kirsten?
Financial subcommittee did not meet, but we are meeting on November 3rd.
November 3rd. And the CIP subcommittee report, Asia?
Yeah, thank you. The CIP subcommittee has not met since the last time. And we'll be scheduling our next meeting, but we don't have a date for that. And I did want to note, I know we need to move on the agenda, but I do really appreciate, it was a very packed agenda. But the presentations we had today, I thought it was really good to hear from the community partnerships and the, on the bigger picture and the cross-jurisdictional and cross-disciplinary work, because I think that really is important to that bigger picture CIP and, how the county fits in and where the county's a driver in those things. So, yeah, it was a packed meeting, but I thought that it was really good, those first couple presentations and all of the presentations. So, thanks.
Thank you, Nisha. I totally agree with you. We'll move on to the Citizen Water Advisory Committee. We currently do not have a representative from CWAC on this committee. However, last month was my first meeting on CWAC. So I will let you know, I'm gonna sort of cover that while we don't have anybody from them. And so I was welcomed. It was great. There are 2 new members on the committee, so that's great. They are struggling to fill their subcommittees, and so they're doing some reorganization on the subcommittee level. And that's just because there's only so many members and there's quite a lot of subcommittees and they meet monthly. So it's quite a lot. We did have a presentation on CIP, covering all kinds of things, wells, reservoir, transmission, their CIP process improvements, and also had an HR update. So nothing that is sort of out of the ordinary for this committee, actually. And not surprisingly, they're having some similar challenges with hiring and with having competitive salaries that we see in Pima County as well. So it's just a across the board kind of thing. And there was a long discussion about that and how those competitive rates work and what some of their issues are. And one of the things that was really interesting to me was that there was a dearth of engineers. I don't know if you guys know this, but there were a dearth of engineers coming out of schools about 10 years ago. And so what happened is that a lot of entry-level engineers are being promoted into higher level positions quickly. And so there's just sort of a problem with having consistently hired people over time, and engineers and similar professional level people. So that was interesting. I don't know if others have seen that, but I thought I'd share that. So that's all I have from that committee.
Thank you, Claire.
You're welcome. We'll move on to item I, which is future agenda items, and we just had one future agenda item to pull that forward. I love the idea of having a little more finance all through the year because it's complicated, and it's great to have a little more in this committee and not just in the subcommittees. So,
And
Yes.
also I'd like to add a future agenda item. We're seeing more and more of data centers coming on the radar screen here in the various cities. I'd just like to have something said about
But how does that apply to wastewater?
on data centers' impact on wastewater.
Okay.
There's various technologies of using water, which becomes wastewater, or building brand new larger facilities, infrastructure, the wastewater. So how's that going to impact us if it's Tucson or Marana or whatever? And just seeing more and more of this data center all of a sudden.
Get together with Max and we'll try to get this schedule you something, because I know you did all that turbidity and all of that stuff.
Sure.
Okay, sound good? Does that sound like what you're thinking?
any other future agenda items? Yes. Do you have one, Janine?
I have one. Previously at past meeting, several of the committee members requested a tour of wastewater facilities. Now, I don't know if potentially, the whole committee would like to go on a tour. If they would like to do Tres Rios, Agua Nueva, if they'd like to see some of the sub-regional facilities. So anybody who's interested in going on a tour, Claire and I were talking, we were thinking potentially in January when it's cooler, because we do not want to sweat. Go ahead and email me and I'll kind of compile everything and I'll let everybody know at the next meeting. Sound good?
Great.
Okay.
All right. We'll have call to the audience. Are there any audience members? Oh, yes.
I'll be quick. I just wanted to address the question Craig asked earlier about water quantity with AWP. Their city's current plan is to create a 2.5 MGD AWP facility and also a 5 MGD reclaim facility at Tres Rios. So it's total 7.5 MGD potential. But if you look at the remaining water that they own that currently is recharged with Lower Santa Cruz Managed Recharge Project, I just checked, 2024 was about 4 MGD worth of water. So the bulk of the water that is in the Santa Cruz River is owned by Tohono O'odham Nation, managed by Bureau of Reclamation, SOARSA. So unless they indicate the nation indicates that they want a different direction for their water, there's at least, they, a minimum of 28,200 acre feet likely guaranteed in the river.
Oh, great, thank you.
Thank you.
All right, any other audience contributions? Hearing none, I'll call for adjournment. Do I have a motion? And do I have a second?
Second.
And any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, we will adjourn. Thank you, everybody. Great meeting today. And even without Jackson, we managed to fill a lot of time.
Short.
A full 2-hour meeting. Thank you all.
Thanks so much.
There you go, 9 whole minutes. Excellent job there.
Oh, yeah, it was fun.
Great meeting.